the number one driver of not coming back to your dealership was convenience and location. We live in this me economy where everything comes to me. All of these things we're talking about passes the me test. Who wouldn't want something to come to them rather than having to go to it? Whether or not it's a Harvard Business Review or on the back of a napkin, you've got to have some sort of plan as to how you're going to attack this. I think you and I would both agree that if customers are getting something convenient, dealers are making decent revenue with high margins in it, and the customers are super happy, there's a high likelihood that this is going to create retention opportunities.
Welcome to Retention Roadmap, Navigating Service Success for New Car Dealerships. I'm your host, Bill Springer. Today's podcast is sponsored by DriveSure. DriveSure helps new car dealerships remain the go-to provider for maintenance, tires, and repairs. For information on how DriveSure can help your dealership, go to drivesure.com/dealership solutions. Today, I'm joined by Amit Chandarana, CEO of Curbee, a leading mobile service technology platform that's transforming how dealerships engage with customers. With a rich background in automotive innovation, Amit is at the forefront of integrating mobile service solutions to enhance customer retention and satisfaction. Under his leadership, Curbee has partnered with major OEMs, including Stellantis, to bring convenient at-home vehicle maintenance to customers and redefining the dealership service experience. Amit, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate you having us on.
Absolutely. So let's start a little bit with about the evolution of mobile service in dealerships. Before we were talking about just how far back really the seeds of mobile service go. And so I was hoping you could kind of take us through how mobile service has evolved and how Curbee's approach to mobile service has evolved as well.
Yeah, what we were talking about a few minutes ago is, there's evidence of about 100 years ago, mobile service being introduced by Cadillac with a Harley Davidson sidecar with at-home service. So the idea is certainly not novel. Operationalizing it, I think, is becoming much more of a thing now. And our genesis within mobile service started really with Tesla, because the founders of our company are from Tesla. They were there during the early days operationalizing it. And of course, they had to have a mobile service operation because the lack of physical locations for Tesla. And so when they first started the venture studio, naturally, the first responsibility or the first thought process was, we've got to go do this in the non-EV space or in the non-Tesla world. So we were a direct-to-consumer company starting in 2020 that went out and did mobile service. So we were doing at-home repair, maintenance work. Clearly, we couldn't do warranty work because we weren't authorized by the manufacturers. You fast forward about 3 or 4 years, after we did over 30,000 of these in California and in Arizona, we realized that dealers were coming to us and asking us how we got the right van to the right job at the right time, on the right truck with the right tools and the right revenue and the optimizations. And sort of light bulbs went off at that point about flipping this and directly pivoting to a B2B software play. So mid-2024, we completely shut down all of our direct-to-consumer business, and all we do is work directly with dealerships to help them operationalize their mobile service with our platform. We talk about it all the time. We certainly have built software, but it's I would say 80% of it is the solutions and the support after the fact.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you're focusing now really on the process and the tools that enable the easily enable the interaction between the customer and the dealership to engage in that mobile service, and kind of are leaving the hardware and that type of thing off to others who can tackle that.
Yeah, we're really no longer in the oily bits business, if you will. No tools, no techs, no trucks. But the software is at the genesis. It's at the middle layer, and then after that, we're making sure that the best practices and the playbooks and all the bumps and bruises that we've gone through are the things that we're working with the dealerships with, and then there is change management that takes place.
Sure. Talk to us a little bit about your platform and kind of not only how that integrates with existing dealership systems, but what's kind of the major problem that your platform solves for the dealership as it relates to mobile service?
Yeah, the name of the platform is Mars, and it's a sort of fun play on mobile and remote service. And what it does is it upends the traditional scheduling of service. If you think about the way service is scheduled, and there's some really fantastic platforms out there, but essentially you're trying to drive 6 to 7, 8 appointments per hour, maybe 10 to 15-minute intervals. You're having most of these vehicles come into the drive. Dispatch and ASMs are basically responsible at that time, working with porters to make sure that these vehicles are getting to the right place at the right time. It works clearly. However, if you've ever gone to a dealership between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., you would potentially argue that there needs to be a better way. But at the end of the day, you're at the mercy of when that customer gets there. So with that being said, we sort of flip it on its head. When you start with mobile service, we start by creating down to the 1/100ths a geo map for a dealership of where mobile service is going to be eligible or offered. So we actually start, the most important thing we do is find the location of where the customer's mobile service will be completed. Then we start getting information on their vehicle, and we align that with real-time and historical traffic data, the performance of the dealership on certain op codes, buffer in time to get there, the type of revenue, and then we start reverse engineering our lineup of how you optimize the appointment. So once we understand the mobile-friendly op codes that we build into your platform, we're essentially taking all of the information and we're synthesizing it before the appointment. So I would say to you, Bill, sure, we can do a mobile service appointment. You can either come into our dealership next Friday or we'll come to you on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of hear this slight pause because the customer is a little bit confused as to, wait, you're going to come to me? And we'll give you a 4-hour window next Wednesday. We know no one really enjoys the plumber experience of, hey, I'll be there between 8 and 12. We let you know that the night before, we're going to dial that down into a 1 hour. And our dealerships that go out, 90% or better are on time because there's a little bit of wiggle room in there. And as we keep learning and we keep getting data from dealerships about when they're performing their services, and we've got all the data, when they start, when they stop, we continue to synthesize and optimize this. There's a little bit of artificial intelligence used in there also.
Cool. In your experience, Amit, in terms of looking at the type of dealers that there are across the country, are there any types of dealerships, in terms of rural versus urban, suburban, that type of thing, where either mobile service is a little bit easier to execute or is a little bit more difficult? How does where a dealership is located kind of work into the calculus of mobile service for a dealership?
Yeah, to be fair, our ICP, or the ideal customer profile or the ideal dealer, it would be easier for me to say that, yes, it was a rural location because it's flat ground versus somebody in the Northeast when it's 20 below. There really isn't. And sort of the example we look at, all things that come to you, right? We also have to go back to, we live in this me economy where everything comes to me. All of these things we're talking about passes the me test. Mm-hmm. Who wouldn't want something to come to them rather than having to go to it? So that doesn't have any discretion. That happens across this country. We have dealers who work in 110 degrees in Southern California, while Mohawk Chevy in Albany is working at 20 below in upstate New York. So there really is no discretion. There's no discrimination on the physical geography. Now, with that being said, when we draw these maps and we optimize the area of work, there are times where dealers will say, hey, I'm in certain city and I want to draw a circle around this, or a Pac-Man looking design, because that area, there's a naval base there and we don't want to be able to drive right through that. Or this location is just no longer safe. Or there's too many hills over here. So we certainly don't believe that physical locations or geographies are a limiter. In fact, the dealerships in flatlands in the middle of this country certainly have the opportunity to go out even further because they can get to places quicker. Mm-hmm. And of course, if you're in Los Angeles or Miami or New York or somewhere, you might only go 5 to 6 miles away because that could be a 30-minute journey. But we're going to continuously optimize that so that you're minimizing the windshield time and you're maximizing the density.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about, obviously, the topic near and dear to my heart and yours, I'm sure yours as well, and that's kind of re-engaging. How does mobile service help re-engage lost customers, and what kind of talk a little bit about the impact that mobile service can have on re-engaging customers and retaining customers, and what kind of results or data do you have that might shed some light on that?
Yeah, there's two aspects to this, to be fair. We've had a lot of phone calls from dealers and OEMs directly on this. Let's unpack one aspect of the last 3-4 years. 2020 to 2023 was a complete unprecedented environment. And when that environment took place, you had dealers who had 2-day supply of vehicles and were selling cars for $45,000 to $5,000 over invoice. To be fair, those vehicles were being pumped out. So cars are just being sold to locations outside of the PMA. And these are customers who are buying cars 20, 30, 40, 50 miles away. And there's a high likelihood that they're not going to come back just because of the inconvenience, right? So a lot of dealers have lower service retention numbers, and they've called us to say we need to be able to figure out a way to be able to not necessarily get those customers back, but the other vehicles that were pumped into our market, we need to establish a relationship with them. So put that aside again. Service retention numbers have basically gone down because of what took place over the last 3 or 4 years. And that's the sweet spot of service retention, right? The first 3 to 5 years. Second, we did a study with a manufacturer. A manufacturer came to us and said, here is a list of customers, thousands of customers that hadn't been back in our dealers' CRMs in the last 18 months. As you and I would consider them lost customers.
Right.
We worked directly with this manufacturer, and there were massive amount of open recalls for each of these customers. By working directly with this manufacturer, 92% of the customers received service. So I want to be clear. It wasn't that they were hand raisers. They received service when they were offered via mobile. And that study is on our website, and happy to share with anybody. But what it shows you is that the number one driver of not coming back to your dealership was convenience and location.
Yeah.
And look, I grew up on the OEM side. I walked into dealerships with these famous sayings: sales sells the first car, service sells 2, 3, and 4. Or if a customer comes in 3 times, they're 80% more likely to buy a vehicle from you. Well, when I talk to OEMs now, that number isn't 3 times, it's 4 and 5 times, because customers are just less loyal to a brand and more loyal to Apple CarPlay at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. True. Very true. Yeah. I think in addition to what you said, Amit, looking back over that period, 2020 to 2023, dealers were obviously selling less vehicles because they just couldn't get as many as they wanted. And as a result of that, right now in 2025, we're at that 3, 4, 5 year point in the service customer journey, and where typically that's when they start to defect to aftermarket providers. So there's just fewer of them available to come in, which means you have to work, in many cases, twice as hard to make sure that you're retaining customers just to stay even in the game. So we've seen that with a lot of dealerships as well.
Yeah, I think a couple days ago, I heard a refreshed data point, which is the average vehicle is now 13 years old. The average vehicle on the road is now 13. So that's the oldest a vehicle's been on the history of us keeping that record as an industry.
Mm-hmm.
We know that cars are lasting longer, that's for sure, but there is more maintenance that's required, and then the repair comes along. So every dealer certainly wants that opportunity to be able to do, not only the 30K, but the 60K, the 90K, any of the repairs that take place after 100, 150,000 miles, because they're keeping these cars longer. That's what the data shows you. And there's some really wonderful opportunities to make sure the vehicles are safe and also drive higher revenue on those repair orders.
Yep. Just a follow-up question to what when we were talking about kind of operationalizing mobile service. Is it different communicating with the mobile service customer during and after service than it is a customer who's coming into the service drive? Are they printing out repair orders? Are they, or is it all electronic? Are they providing if they're doing an oil change, for instance, are they do they have a sticker to put on a customer's windshield and that type of thing? What are some of the differences there, if any, that you see from a mobile service perspective?
Yeah, you bring up really good points. And this is sort of like ice cream. There's a lot of different flavors in the way that each dealership is going to do this.
Yeah.
But let's take a couple examples of that. Essentially, a mobile service appointment is booked. There's 5 to 7 buckets that we recommend, that we have a lot of experience with, that a lot of the dealers use. And I'll just rip through these really quick. It's fluids and filters. It's bulbs, blades, and batteries, oil, tire rotation. If you want to move the tire, changing, that's another level of upfitting effort. And then the biggest area of focus, just to be brutally fair, is recalls. 70 million open recalls. 25% of those are software updates or inspections. So 18 million of them are software updates or inspections. That's the sweet spot to start with. So most dealers with our platform, they can see all of the parts that are required for the next day's visits. Then they can see upsells or recommended parts that they should continue to have. Oftentimes when you're going out and doing a recall, you take wiper blades and a cabin air filter with you, and the customer convenience in that just takes over. 70% of the time they accept those. So sometimes dealers are going to use their Techion application and the MPI that they're already very comfortable with and use that to pay, or they're going to print out repair orders, have the stickers that you mentioned in the vehicle with them, go out to the customer, complete the job. And if there's any amendments that need to be made, they're contacting the dealership with one touch through our application, and the dealership's going to send them a link to pay and a revised RO for completion.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about your new partnership with Stellantis and the impact that has. So you recently announced a partnership with Stellantis where they're incentivizing dealerships for adopting mobile service. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit on the goals and what the expected outcomes of this collaboration is?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a lot of conversations with, I would say almost all 17 manufacturers have reached out in some way, shape, or form, whether or not it's through a field office or directly. Stellantis reached out some time ago, and we've had really wonderful conversations with them. And essentially, the conversation was they have a Mopar program, and their Mopar program for mobile service has been doing well, and they wanted to continue to get more data. I really applaud them in the fact that they were really seeking data. And so what they've done is they've used, in life we have carrots and sticks, and they're using their carrots. They're using the incentives. As someone who grew up on the OEM side, I just had either a warranty checkbook or I had additional vehicles, right? And so Stellantis has really stepped up with the incentives that they're offering. So they're offering dealers, if they haven't done Mopar mobile service before, they're offering them a significant amount of money to be able to start this up, get the vehicle upfitted. They can also utilize it for marketing materials, to merchandise mobile service in and of itself. And then they have small requirements to make sure that you're hitting 25 mobile service appointments after 3 months. In addition, they're providing incentive funds to be able to pay for our platform, in addition to using some of the other tools out there in the industry, recall information, mobile service platform for scheduling. So they've done a really wonderful job. And then the dealers that are already in the program have incentives in there just to go drive more of that. And they've been very thoughtful, I would say, to not over-regulate it. They've been thoughtful to make sure that the dealers move fast, get a lot of data, so that I think they can make better decisions as they move forward, because it's clear that customers are seeking this out, and this is a really wonderful opportunity for dealers, especially ones that have capacity in their shop.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad you brought up, Stellantis really focusing on the data. What are some of the, if you could pick out a few key performance indicators that a dealership should focus on when it comes to mobile service, what might those be?
It starts with the crawl, walk, run approach. We typically have most of our dealers within 45 days of going live. They are doing somewhere between 5 and 7 appointments per day. When you're doing 5 and 7 appointments per day, the average appointment is about 55 minutes, and 70% of them have some level of upsell or additional products being offered. So again, we just talked them through, Bill. If I came to your home and was doing a software update and I showed you your cabin air filter and said, hey, Bill, next time you come in, you might want to take care of this cabin air filter. I can set the appointment for you. It's about $55. What usually goes through Bill's head is, so is it the same price if I come in or do it now? Yeah, it's the same exact price. Well, the agita of booking the appointment, driving there, having something completed while I can have you do it now has shown that 70% of the times customers are accepting other products that are recommended. So there's a really wonderful opportunity to keep that retention going and also bring in the service retention numbers back up. So once we get to about 5 to 7 appointments per day, you're running about 5 days a week. We haven't even unlocked any of the opportunities when it comes to fleet. So the platform is continuously being optimized for consumers. It's also being optimized for the fleet business. You will usually get to about 7 to 12 appointments after 45, 60 days. And then if a fleet account comes into play, that's really where this massive unlock takes place, because our hours allow you to go in there at 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. before the Terminix Tacomas go out on the road. Right. Or a lot of the other facilities have told us that a lot of our businesses that the dealers work with like to have this work done between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night when there's no downtime on the revenue opportunities.
Yeah, that makes an awful lot of sense for sure. Yeah, I mean, it really does sound like the mobile service can really enhance the overall experience. Do you have any, staying with the key indicators, I'm curious if you have any sense of what a customer who has a mobile service experience, what their retention rate is, either for another mobile experience or coming into the service drive at the dealership.
Yeah, but we're a little bit too early to have the retention data on a mobile service recidivism. We started selling the platform to dealerships in July of last year, so it's been less than a year. And so the available data on the recidivism of this just isn't available, because most of these folks are coming in every 6 months or 12 months at this point. recalls are causing us to be able to go back out. There is an indicator that's going to indicate that KPI, if you will, or if it's going to futurecast it. 4.7 is the CSI out of 5. So it's sort of CSI is the biggest no-brainer in this whole thing. So
Yeah.
I think you and I would both agree that if customers are getting something convenient, dealers are making decent revenue with high margins in it, and the customers are super happy, there's a high likelihood that this is going to create retention opportunities.
Yeah. Makes sense. So Amit, before I let you go, what would be one piece of advice you'd give a dealer principal or GM or fixed ops director who's just starting to explore mobile service as part of their retention strategy?
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice would be maybe it's a couple things. Number one, in some ways we overthink it. We do not allow the me test to be the number one decision maker. This passes the me test. I was with probably 300 or 400 dealers at this conference this past week, and every dealer said, I probably wouldn't come to my service drive and wait for an hour and a half, no matter how great the facility is, no matter how wonderful the coffee is and the experience. Most don't want to come in there, and we know that. So if it passes the me test and it's something that you wouldn't want to do, why do we expect our customers to do it? Now, I'm not saying you've built $20 million facilities and you have 75 bays. Those are still going to be utilized. But then let's do the math, right? If a dealership, I think Ford a couple of days ago had a recall that just came out with a couple 100,000 vehicles. Those vehicles are going to need to trickle into the shop for 6 to 8 hours to have some of those repairs done, right? So if a dealership wanted to unlock more shop capacity, let's go through this back of the napkin math. It's anywhere between $100,000 and $200,000 to add a new service bay. If you have the space, the agita for the 6 months of downtime, the planning, the permits, the real estate. Well, with mobile service, the reality is, in most situations, you can upfit a vehicle for $12,000 to $15,000, be up and running in 30 days, and get an extra 7 to 10 repair orders so that you can also backfill and unlock the capacity in your drive. And the reality is, your investment is you're probably not hiring a lot more techs or a lot more personnel. We help you utilize the same techs and the personnel that you have. Therefore, your risk mitigation is very low in the sense of your barriers to entry are not that high. And you have the ability to get a bunch of data back and see if this thing works for you. Mm-hmm. So if you take the me test and you see that your barriers to entry are actually quite low, and you partner with somebody to be able to work through this and operationalize it, I think we have a really good opportunity to be able to provide this level of satisfaction. And the last piece of advice I would give anybody, whether or not it's a Harvard Business Review or on the back of a napkin, you got to have some sort of plan as to how you're going to attack this.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've given us just tons to think about as it relates to mobile service, Amit. I really appreciate you doing that. If any of our listeners have any questions or would like to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, if they shoot us a note at hello@Curbee, or just go to Curbee's website and reach out to us, we'd be happy to chat with them more about mobile service and see how we can support them.
Okay, super. Thanks very much. Amit, thanks very much for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for having us.
You've been listening to Retention Roadmap, Navigating Service Success for New Car Dealerships. Subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.